Hereby I open this academic ceremony in which Ms. Dajana Roshi will defend her academic thesis, Pharmaceutical Policies in Post-Communist Albania. I wish you welcome and a lot of success together with your partner. I also welcome your supervisors, Professor Chabanovska, Professor Brandt, who's online, Professor Buraceri, and the co-supervisor, Dr. Italia, and of course the members of the opposition, whom you will meet later on, and your guests here, present and online. But before we start the opposition, I give you the opportunity to tell your family and friends what your thesis is about.
Dear Prorector, dear members of the Defense Committee, dear family and friends who are gathered here today and watching us through the live stream, in the next few minutes I will be presenting the research that I've been conducting the past years on pharmaceutical policies in post-communist Albania. Albania has gained the European candidate membership in 2014, and the negotiations have been opened in 2022. And since then, several reports have been launched from the European Union regarding Albania's progress towards Europeanization, and the recommendations remain practically the same through the years. It is recommended a further alignment of Albanian legislation with the European health acquis on medicines for human use, as well as the guarantee to equal access for quality health services for vulnerable populations, and to increase the financial and human resources in the health sector. In addition to that, we have a pharmacovigilance sector that has been existing since 2011 as part of the Albanian National Agency for Medicines and Medical Devices, but through the years there has been no official bylaw by which this very important part of the health system would function. It is seen that the European Medicines Agency recommendations are partially followed from health policy-making institutions, and there is a general poor patient access and understanding. Some definitions that would put a frame to my thesis are the Western Balkan countries in transition, which refers to the open economies of this market that are transitioning towards Europeanization and towards being high-income countries. We have the term of pharmaceutical policies, which is a whole rule book that includes regulations, laws, and guidelines that would cover all stages that a medicine goes through, from the moment of its production, its clinical trials, marketing authorization, availability in the market, and pharmacovigilance as well. And the last term that we are referring to is the term of Europeanization, which refers to the full alignment of the domestic policies of a non-European country to European ones. Our overall aim, as said, is to analyze the pharmaceutical policies in Albania from the fall of the communist regime to the present by assessing some main endpoints that would evaluate the pharmaceutical policies of a country. The first one is the prevalence and socioeconomic correlates of emergency contraceptive use, and we wanted also to gain access on the women's way of purchasing EMCs in our country. We wanted to assess the level of understanding of the medication information and medication intake adherence among primary healthcare users, and the level of progress that the Western Balkan countries and Albania have made towards the Europeanization of their pharmaceutical policies. Our theoretical model is the one of the top-down approach, where we see Europeanization as the bigger concept, and we come down to analyzing in domestic level, and we evaluate how non-European Western Balkan countries have managed to achieve Europeanization. So the first objective has been achieved by using a quantitative methodology, which involved 205 women and 54 pharmacists who answered to a questionnaire that was a paper-based or online questionnaire. And we wanted to access also some sales figures regarding the use of EMCs in Albania. As a general result, we can say that the majority of women knew about the main indication and the way of usage of the emergency contraceptives, and they referred to purchasing them without prescription. The knowledge and use was not homogeneous across the subjects that we took into the study, because it was the women who had a higher education and a higher income who knew more about these kinds of medicines, but it was those who had a lower income and a lower education who had a higher use of EMCs. And coming down to the pharmaceutical policies of these medicines, although EMA recommended switching these medicines to non-prescription status, some of them are still with prescription status in Albania. Regarding the level of understanding of the medication information and medication intake adherence in primary healthcare users, we used a quantitative methodology where 1,553 primary healthcare users answered to a paper-based questionnaire that was distributed in 5 cities in Albania in primary healthcare centers. And generally, half of the participants did not take the prescribed medications for reasons such as high cost, mistrust, or forgetting the medication. 40% of them accepted the price of the medication, 66% understood the side effects, and 66 to 79% had an understanding of the names, dosages, and hours of the medication. The progress that Albania has made towards Europeanization was evaluated by a qualitative methodology, where we reviewed the Albania's National Publication Office and we analyzed all available legislation that was regarding pharmacy, medicines, or pharmaceutical products. And the second source of our data was the national integration plans that the Albanian government publishes periodically regarding their plans towards Europeanization. In general, we have partially aligned laws with the European Union, and we have laws that need to be implemented or that are non-existing. Some of the partially aligned laws are the law on medicines and pharmaceutical service, the law on medical devices, the ordinance on clinical trials, the ordinance of Albanian language leaflet, and the ordinance on medicines advertisement. The ones that need to be implemented and that are non-existent are the track and trace system, the control of the online sales of the law on medicines for pediatric use, and the system on opening the pharmacies. The Europeanization of the Western Balkans pharmaceutical policies was assessed through examining the country progress reports that 6 Western Balkan countries submit to the European Union since 2005 to 2020. As a result, these countries are moving positively toward the Europeanization. Not all of them have signed a joint procurement agreement, and it remains that ordinances such as the clinical trial ordinance, the local language leaflet, and the medicine advertisement to be aligned with the European ones. There were some limitations to our research. The first, regarding the first study, it was the sample size, because it's not a sample that is nationwide representative. In the second and in the third study, the limitation is regarding generalizability, where, because we did not include non-primary healthcare users or the ones that are seriously ill, and probably that might be considered for further research. And in the fourth and fifth study, we had to analyze only qualitative data because quantitative ones were missing. If we were to align the pharmaceutical policies of Albania with the European health acquis on medicines for human use, of course we would have an improved access to quality medicines. It would enhance transparency, safety, and efficiency in the pharmaceutical sector, and it would, of course, facilitate Albania's accession process, and it would ensure better health outcomes. There are some implications for pharmaceutical policies in order to achieve that, because we would have to implement legislative reforms, institutional capacity building, especially when it comes to medicine marketing authorization, market surveillance, and pricing mechanism. And we would have to implement or make investments in regulatory infrastructure and workforce training. We recommend that policymakers to be aware of the strong connection that there is between health literacy and information provision. Also, the provision of essential medication free of charge should be considered at least at the ones that are that pertain to the lower financial status or that are lowly educated. All Western Balkan countries should sign the joint procurement agreement, because that would make them to buy medicines for a lower price. And we recommend to reinforce the laws that regulate the pharmaceutical system in Albania. As a conclusion, in Albania, the pharmaceutical legislation covers most of the crucial pillars of the system. We have some regulation and laws that need to be created or implemented because they are not existent. And Albanian institutions do not fully comply with their European Union equivalent institutions, and patient access needs to be improved through adequate policy making. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roshi, the candidate, for a nice presentation. We're now going to start the opposition, and we start with the chair of the assessment committee, that's Professor Pavlova. She's Professor of Health, Economics and Equity in the University of Maastricht. Professor Pavlova.
Dear candidate, my congratulations for your, and to you and to your supervisory team for this important work that we have also has been presented now during the presentation. Your dissertation investigates a very relevant public health topic, which is related to pharmaceutical policy in non-EU country and how it aligns to EU pharmaceutical regulations. From the perspective of health science, this is a really important investigation, because countries that outside the EU are much less studied, and there are largely unexplored cases, and therefore the studies in your dissertation are important not only to policy but also to research in general. The fact that parts of your dissertations are published in important academic journals also confirms the quality of the research work presented in the dissertation. I will be happy to discuss with you some points regarding the framing of your dissertation, and those points were especially important to me when I was reading the dissertation. So the first point is your overarching aim, and you also presented the aim here in the slides. We have seen, and also I stated in the general introduction chapter, the aim was to assess the pharmaceutical policy in Albania from the fall of the communist regime to the present. Now, I think that this is quite broad and challenging aim. And afterwards in the dissertation, you list four, I will call them sub-aims, and they focus on emergency contraceptives in Albania, primary care users' understanding of pharmaceutical information in Southeast Europe, alignment of West Balkan policies to EU health and consumer policies, development of pharmaceutical legislation in Albania. So when I read all this, it sounds all very different settings, very different study subjects, very different methods. So I was wondering, while the overall aim of your dissertation is very clear, although broad, I was not able to find any reasonable justification in the dissertation why those sub-aims. So why did you choose those specific sub-questions? Do they really allow you to comprehensively assess pharmaceutical policy in Albania from the communist regime, from the fall of the communist regime to the present. What was the motivation? Was there any framework or any other motivation for the choice of those 4 sub-aims?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your kind words and for your question. So, since the fall of the communist regime until now talking, Europeanization remains the main aim that Albania has had through the years. And through my work in a national institution for 7 years, I have been facing the lack of legislation in many fields, pharmacovigilance, inspection, and fields that affect the safety of the medicine, but also the access. So we conducted this study as a way of evaluating what progress have we made since those years until now that we are talking. And these studies are some of the endpoints that show how pharmaceutical policies or how our policy making is affecting these main fields that are the access, the understanding, the following of the recommendation of the European Medicines Agency, and also the alignment of the legislation. And since the fall of the communist regime until now, the reforms are usually 4-year or 5-year reforms, and and as I said in the first slide, the recommendations and the progress that we have made remain practically the same. They still recommend aligning with the European health acquis on medicines for human use. So this was our best way or best approach to see what progress have we made since then until now that we are speaking.
My question is also, for example, why contraceptives? Why not vaccination? For example, screening?
Sorry.
Yeah, so why Southeast Europe in one chapter, why Western Balkan in the other chapter? So what is the link between the 4 sub-aims?
Okay, so regarding the first question, it was the moment where I started the PhD that European medicines made this kind of recommendation, and it seemed as a good starting point, considering that at that point in European Union this kind of medicines were given without prescription. We were facing that in Albania some of those medications were still purchased with prescription. And regarding the connection, as I said, there is a lack of data when it comes to Europeanization, because we had data only for the Western Balkans, and the reports that European Union makes are regarding the Western Balkan countries. So that's why we conducted the studies on Europeanization in the Western Balkans, but we referred in the third and in the fourth study to Albania as a South European Union country.
Okay, so as I understand, the choice of the aim is more pragmatic, depending on what kind of data could be collected and what was relevant at that specific moment. So there were some aspects that you are not able to explore. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you have an opportunity to redo your PhD project with knowledge of today. What you will do different in terms of topics, in terms of methods? Will be there any specific gaps that you could have explored in a project like this? Could you please discuss?
Yes, there is a gap that existed and still exists when it comes to data on this specific subject, and there is the fact that not only there is limited data, but the data that are existed are similarly the same through the years when it comes to the term of Europeanization in that specific aspect. When it comes to me doing something differently, maybe in the first study I would see if there are other recommendations beside the emergency contraceptives. If there are other recommendations from EMA that we are not following, maybe a recall of the medicine from the market or a change in a medicine's indication or in the leaflet, because they do this sort of changes through the year and through the time of medicine existing in the market. So I would assess maybe other recommendations from EMA as well. In the second, in the third study, we would probably maybe as I said, in the limitations, broad the study in non-primary healthcare users or in the ones that are seriously ill. Although, if I were to do that, maybe that would come another PhD topic, because the number of these subjects that were to be analyzed would be so big that it would be another whole research. So, yeah, nothing comes to my mind other than this.
Okay, thank you for the discussion.
Thank you.
I have no further question. I give the word back to the prorector.
Thank you very much, Professor Pavlova, for your position. Then we go to Professor Galici. She's Deputy Rector of the University of Medicine, and that is in Tirana, in Albania. And thank you for coming all the way from Albania. The University of Maastricht is always very glad to have guests from abroad and outside the university.
Thank you
Floor
so
is
much.
yours.
Thank you so much, Rector. I'm happy to be here, and once again, I thank you for the opportunity given to assist in the defense, in the PhD defense of a student of mine and a colleague of mine, actually, because Mrs. Dajana has studied in our university, but also I have followed her in her professional growing along these years in different positions that she had within the Albanian health system, and especially in the pharmaceutical system. I would like to congratulate you on the work done and on addressing different topics that we know very well are important for us in Albania, within our situation, within our context, health system context, let's say. And this, of course, would influence or give a hand or contribute to the improvement of things in Albania. I would like to ask a few questions about the thesis. You touched or addressed different topics. One of them was about medication adherence. And you identified the level of adherence within the primary care users in Albania, but also identified some factors that can contribute to it. And considering the study findings on exactly on medication adherence, what policy interventions or regulations would you recommend that could be implemented to overcome the cost-related barriers that can influence the medication adherence or the modality in which patients are using drugs, the correctness of using the drugs?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your comments and for your question. From my experience now through the years in working in the pharmaceutical system in Albania, I would recommend to the health policy makers to retouch or update their policy-making policies. Their pricing, because that would probably make the medicines prices change or be more, let's say, better for the population, as well as broader the reimbursement list, maybe make it more inclusive. Maybe we can see the reimbursement policies, how a medicine is put in the reimbursement list, to see if there is something we can do there, or maybe let's say, for example, make a study and see what medicines are mostly used and what are those that are most needed for the patient that they can't buy or they can't access. And we can look into that as well. And or at least make some policies for vulnerable populations, the ones that belong to a very low financial status, or the minorities, yeah.
So this may be a starting point for another exploration of the situation, which could be exactly
a study in
the initiatives
policies,
to be undertaken in order to overcome this problem.
Yeah,
Reimbursement.
A study in pricing policies through the years would be very interesting to see how we have evolved and what we can do, because that's what affects the medication intake mostly.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I have a second question. Also, you identified some gaps in the Albanian legislation. Given the fact that the gaps identified in Albanian pharmaceutical legislation regarding especially the lack of legislation on pharmacovigilance, and you know very well the pharmacovigilance systems as you worked in the Agency of Drugs in this sector, but it's still missing regulation on it, and also the missing of specific rules on pediatric use of medicinal product. What would be your suggestions to the health authorities in order to align our pharmaceutical legislation with the EU standards, considering also the fact that Albania is an EU candidate country and we are aspiring to become an European Union country? So in light of this situation, what would you suggest to the health authorities to fill this gap, let's say?
So, to my knowledge, through the years, there have been implemented some intersectoral working groups. I have been part of some of them during the years working in the national institution. And these groups analyze the laws that we already have with the ones in the European Union, article by article. Mm-hmm. And if we were to do just that and implement only these articles that are missing, because here we are speaking for partially aligned laws, then it would just leave room for the implementation years. So we just amend the law, approve it. I mean, not so fast, but it would take some time, but approve this amended law or regulation. We would leave 1 or 2 years for its implementation and we would be there. Regarding the ones that are missing, as a general rule, some groups, working groups are created in health policy making institutions, and hopefully my thesis would help them to see what's missing, and they would work on these laws and regulations that are missing in order to have them as best aligns with the ones in the European Union, considering that some of the practices that are in European Union are not feasible for Albania yet. So we would have to implement this law, but considering that we are still going in Europe, not there. So yeah. Regarding pharmacovigilance, there is only one thing that's missing. It has to be predicted in the law in order to be approved as a bylaw. Because now, lastly, they have approved an ordinance that's part of their internal regulation, internal institutional regulation, but it has to be as a bylaw. So as a bylaw, it has to come only if it's predicted firstly in the law on medicines and medical device and the pharmaceutical service, and then be approved as an official bylaw.
Yeah. Do you have the feeling that closing the legal gap, let's say these regulations or bylaws, would be also accompanied by an awareness campaign among doctors, pharmacists, in order to be aware on the importance of the pharmacovigilance systems and the need to address pharmacovigilance claims, let's say, to report adverse events or...
That remains the main challenge, because you would have an ordinance. We are members of the WHO program for international drug monitoring, full members. Mm-hmm. We have access to their database. We can insert reports there. And we can do also the ordinance as well. but we would have to have reporting and the patient education and healthcare professionals, not just education, but awareness and sensibilization remains the main challenge. Because if we had all this and we did not, and we wouldn't have reports, then we still wouldn't have pharmacovigilance well functioning, well having the reports and doing something for these signals and these adverse effects that are happening. Yeah. So I still think that although we would invest time in making the law and everything, we still have to implement systems. Maybe take example from European countries, how they operate in order to raise sensibilization first to healthcare professionals and then to the population, yeah, in order to raise also trust, because they maybe feel that they can report it, but what would happen then? So they have to also feel the belief that they are going to have a result from this reporting.
They are going to change something within the system.
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Roshi. And I have no more questions. I give the floor to the prorector. Thank you.
Thank you for your opposition, Professor Carici. Then we're coming to the following opponent, who's also a member of the assessment committee. That's Professor Dracini. He is rector of the University of Medicine in Tirana, and that is also in Albania. He's online, and thank you for coming all the way from Albania, albeit online. The floor is yours.
That's Professor Brandt.
We don't see Professor Dracini, we see Professor Brandt.
Perhaps you please unmute your microphone.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's hearing better? Oh, okay, thank you. So, perfect. First of all, I have to make my personal congratulations to the dear candidate for the excellent work and, of course, the comprehensive discussion about problems of pharmaceutical system in post-communist Albania. I have seen, of course, yearly the thesis and also the presentation. And I have two general topics or questions for the candidate. The first one has to do about adherence. So, seeing the fact that the major burden of disease in Albania is connected with chronic diseases, for example, like metabolic syndrome, and also taking in account that even in Albania, like otherwise in European Union, now the age over 65 years, it's almost 1/5 of the population. We have many cases of polytherapy or different drugs, and of course, having polytherapy, you can find even no adherence. So, how can, or is there any strategy with these family physicians in Albania can improve patient understanding of medication information, especially among population with lower educational attainment and with lower socioeconomic status, in the mood to improve the adherence to prescribed treatment? So, is there a strategy or something that family physicians, family practitioners can help to understand, to improve the patient understanding of medical information? So, improving patient information is possibility to enhance the adherence?
Opponent, highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your comments and for your question. I would suggest that family physicians I'm sure they do, but they have to dedicate more time to explaining the medication, to especially to the groups of patients that you mentioned, but probably family physicians have to be trained, because there is not a science, but there is a way to access the patient with the patient's language. So probably they are explaining to the patient in short way, or just dedicating more time to the indication, to the disease, and to prescribing the medication. But it has to be given a considered time also to the explaining of the medication, especially in the patient's words. So they have to be maybe more understandable from the patient, but also dedicate, as I said, dedicate more time so the patient feels more, let's say, secure on the medication that he is taking, and believe that this medication is going to work, and he has to take the prescription.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. That is quite satisfactory. So my second intervention has to do with the finding of your work. You have found in the work, one of the results, for example, is that mistrust in drug effectiveness was identified during your work as a major factor for the non-adherence. So mistrust in drug effectiveness. So in this kind of vision, what strategies can healthcare providers, government, healthcare system, or even the policy makers in Albania, but perhaps even abroad, can implement to improve the patient confidence in the prescribed medication and the trust in the whole pharmaceutical system in Albania? Is there something that policymakers or healthcare providers in general can do in this direction?
Especially Albanian patients, but all patients in general, the mistrust of patients is related to two factors: pricing and safety. So we have to have pricing mechanisms that are they are well defined, but probably rearrange them better for the patient, in order not to have this pricing that goes lower, higher through the years. And when it comes to safety, of course, pharmacovigilance. So if the patient were to feel that not only the medicine is safe, but he can report it, and from this report an outcome will be available, the institutions will assess it, will evaluate it, will take measures, appropriate measures. And if the patient were also to feel that his medicine, because if we are speaking mostly for chronically ill patients, they take medicines on a regular basis. So it's not maybe it doesn't feel okay for them to face this changing of the pricing very, not often, but time to time. So trust can be risen through better pricing policies and through a well-functioning pharmacovigilance system, in my belief.
Yes, it's true, and I think the answer was right. Practically I don't have any other questions, and again I congratulate you for the good presentation in this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dracini, for your opposition. Now we come to the following opponent, who's also a member of your assessment committee. That's Dr. Hojic, and he's assistant professor in comparative health and health policy research in the Institute of International Health in the University of Maastricht. And he's also online. Dr. Hojic.
Thank you very much, Prorector. Dear candidate, It's a pleasure to be part of your defense. Congratulations on a job well done. I read your thesis with a lot of interest. As someone from that part of Europe, I'm always curious to see what is happening in the Western Balkans, especially when it comes to Europeanization within health systems. So congratulations again. I think you've made a very important contribution to our understanding. Of course, I have a few questions. And if you allow me, I will ask a couple of questions about the methodology and some of the choices that you've made there. As an epidemiologist, I can't move past that. So I hope we can have a fruitful exchange on that. Let me start with chapter 2. So you also in the presentation today highlighted that there were some limitations regarding the sample size of the survey, but a cross-sectional and self-administered survey design also introduces potential recall and selection biases. So my question is, how did you navigate this?
Thank you for your comment and for your question. So in these studies participated trained interviewers, and we had adult primary health care users that were to visit the primary health care centers in a time, let's say, in a specific time frame. So we chose the 5 cities that are most highly populated in Albania in order to have a representative sample of primary healthcare users. And the interviewers, as I said, they were trained on this specific questionnaire, so they were aware on the selection of the patients in order for them to have the questions answered properly and for us to get together the data that we needed.
Yes, that's very clear from your methodology and discussion sections. However, if I may press you a bit on the recall bias issue, even in a perfect circumstance, right, when you have a very willing participant, you have a very well-trained interviewer, there might simply be, memory lapses. There might be people not remembering very well what happened in terms of what medicines they bought a year ago, maybe 5 years ago, etc. So do you reckon that this had a significant effect on your results? And if not, why not?
No, I reckon that this might have had, of course, a significant result because primary healthcare centers are visited from chronically ill patients, and these patients are aware of the medications they take, and it's not likely that they do not remember, but they are also visited by spontaneous adult patients, and these probably are the ones that would affect the results because these don't take the medications chronically, they take them when they need. So he might have had another reason for intake adherence maybe in the past, and he has another reason, or he might be he might have 100% intake adherence for the medication that he's being prescribed now. So the belief and the reasons change in this kind of patients. So of course this might have been a limitation for our study. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sticking to the methodology of survey designs, there's also something we call social desirability bias, which means that your participants will give you answers that they think that you want, right? So in essence, if you ask them about medication adherence, they might remember subconsciously perhaps or consciously that they did a bit better than they really did. So in addition to, let's say, these challenges that we already discussed a few minutes ago, did you think about trying to triangulate the findings when it comes to adherence? For example, looking for additional sources of data, quantitative data, or perhaps looking for anything else that might support the conclusions that you're making regarding medication adherence?
We saw that primary health care users' medication intake adherence and medication information understanding had similar values and results in neighbor countries. I have also assessed that I have also read some studies regarding health literacy in Albanian patients as well, and that is something also that shows, especially for the medication information understanding. So yeah, we refer to these studies as well, because it is true that patients sometimes tend to answer the questions that the way that they think we want the answers, because they are guided by many beliefs or insecurities or who knows. But yeah, that is something that we took into consideration as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's heartening to hear, of course. Would it be possible, for example, to expand on this study and also examine things like refill records? So, for example, patients going back to the pharmacy because they need additional medicines, because they used up all of the medicines that they were prescribed in the first round. Is this something that could be accessible in your context, or is this something that perhaps still has to be worked on?
Be accessible in Albania, but here, so in Albania, patients don't go to the pharmacy, they go to the doctor. He reassigns in the system the prescription that they're having, the version of the medication, because it depends on the place this medication has in the reimbursement list. So the doctor assigns the specific therapy that he is taking, and with the code of the patient, he goes to the pharmacy, and then he takes the refill. So he doesn't go directly to the pharmacy. And yeah, it would be accessible. Maybe very interesting data could be also drawn from that study as well. It is accessible. It is accessible, yes. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I'm looking forward to reading that study from you then. One final question on the methods regards chapter 5. So that would be where you coded and compared policy documents from different Western Balkan countries. Now, of course, these are very different countries with relatively different contexts. So did you have any consideration or challenges related to consistency or bias in the coding process? So how did you ensure that across the different countries, the different concepts that you were describing and coding were indeed the same between the countries?
Well, we specifically analyzed pharmaceutical policies, and when it comes to European reports chapters, the chapter 28 is the one that refers to health medicines for human use, the health acquis. So we referred only to that chapter. It is challenging because not all countries have the same progress, and not all countries have the same problems. Some of them might have a progress in clinical trials, for example, because this is a field I'm working now, so I know that these countries are better in a field in the clinical trials, as I said, and in Albania this is not a very well evolving field, so it is challenging. But since we analyzed only chapter 28 and only what these reports refer to this chapter, we were somehow sure that we did not have any biases in that concept. If we were to analyze the reports from other resources, because these are progress reports, but maybe if we were to enter in the internet and analyze more articles, and that would be a bit, let's say, more confusing. But since we used only these reports and we referred only to this chapter and only to pharmaceutical policies, that aligns it a bit and makes it a bit more sure for us to gain the results.
Okay, thank you. That's quite persuasive. One final question that I had. Of course, you use Europeanization as your overarching theoretical framework. And in the general discussion, you also note that it might be limited in various ways. Could you reflect on, in your view, what aspects of this framework should be further developed in future work and how they should be future developed? Do you have any ideas for how we can improve Europeanization as a theoretical framework?
Methodology, we use the top-down approach, as you saw, and probably my suggestion would be to be more specific. So we say Europeanization, but probably to divide it in what fields are we speaking, and that might be maybe a suggestion to my part, because I wanted to check, for example, Europeanization of your pharmaceutical policies, and to see only that part, and it wasn't possible. So maybe that would be my recommendation, to divide it in different fields.
Right. So the mechanisms of Europeanization might differ according to what field of policy we're looking at.
Yeah,
okay, those are
exactly.
very interesting ideas. Yeah. Thank you very much, dear candidate.
Thank you.
And I return the floor to the prorector.
Thank you very much for your position, Dr. Hirschis. Then we come to the following opponent, that's Dr. Clemens. He is Associate Professor in Health Policy, Law and Governance at the Department of International Health at the University of Maastricht. And today he has also accepted the role of Secretary of your committee, for which I'm very grateful.
Thank you, dear Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, first of all, I would obviously like to congratulate you with this achievement as well. I think it's a comprehensive thesis with several analyses that you provided, and I understand it has certainly relevant and importance, giving insights to pharmaceutical policies in your countries, and has relevance for the Western Balkans as well. I would like to use the time as well to exchange with you on a couple of questions. Following on Dr. Hirschis, I would like to focus as well on Chapter 5 about the patterns and elements of pharmaceutical policies influenced by the Europeanization process. And I would like to exchange on a couple of methodological conceptual choices you have made. First of all, I was struck by seeing you focused in your analysis as well on antimicrobial resistant policies, as well as pricing of pharmaceutical. And in the context of Europeanization, I was somewhat surprised, given those, I mean, in these areas, the regulation of the EU is rather soft in a way, I would say. So with regard to AMR, we had action plans, we have Council, Commission recommendations, so rather soft law approaches in the area of pricing. The EU is basically not able to regulate because pricing is part of member states to do that. There is the Council regulation on transparency in pricing, but not more. So what have been reasons to focus on AMR and pricing, specifically in the context to establish whether there is a Europeanization influences going on? And why not focus more on, I think, aspects you obviously have touched about: market authorization procedures, clinical trial infrastructure, pharmacovigilance, something where I would say the EU is in the room to regulate.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your comments and thank you for your question. So we focused on antimicrobial resistant and pricing policy because we analyzed the progress report that Western Balkan countries have made. And these were some of the recommendations that were for all these countries. And since all these countries have different progresses and different aims to not different aims, but different ways of achieving Europeanization, because one is lacking pharmacovigilance, one is lacking clinical trials, one is lacking other ordinances. These were the ones that we saw that were missing in all of them: pricing policies and antimicrobial resistance, because the other fields are mostly evolved in some of these countries, but may not be evolved in Albania, and reverse. So that's why we focused on these ones.
But wouldn't that then imply that because they are missing, they seem less important because the EU is not able to regulate, or, not able to provide hard law in these areas, so rather being a sign of not too relevant as an EU influence?
No, other policies, of course, are very relevant because at some point we, for example, in Albania, I'm speaking of the studies for the Western Balkans, but I will, if we were to speak for Albania, we would fix at let's say antimicrobial resistance mechanism, pricing policies, but we would still, when it comes to full Europeanization, we would still be stuck, let's say, at the pharmacovigilance policies. So yes, they are very important because they ensure, pharmacovigilance ensures safety and clinical trials. That's a whole new market and patient access because the patients would have access to higher technology medical devices, medicines that are of the last technology of production and molecules that are very innovative. So yes, they are very important. We just focused on these two because they were the ones that were, let's say, common for all the Western Balkans.
Related to that is, you will be well aware that the Europeanization literature is cautious of that there's only one single independent variable, so to say, and that's Europe. So you wanted to test if there's influence. You look in your study only to the reports that obviously are discussed with the EU. So you are not testing for alternative possibilities in the independent variable. Have you thought about alternative reasons, factors that could have influences that could play a role, why the aspects in terms of pharmaceutical policies are currently on the reform agenda in Albania and the Western Balkans? Are there other actors that may play a role in modernizing pharmaceutical policies in your region?
So if we were to speak for maybe not a negative, but a big influence, of course, have the pharmaceutical companies that operate in Albania. That might also affect the policy making. But as I said, Europeanization has been our main aim for years now. So there are factors, but the desire and the aim to reach Europe is the one that leads. And now, for example, not now, but even the years before, when I used to work at the agency, whenever we want to amend a law or create a new one, we always refer to the existing one in the European Union or in a country that has been recently been member to the European Union to see and to refer to these laws in order to create our own based on our domestic policies.
As well, in Chapter 5, you describe a couple of country differences. Some relate to a difference in how newly established or way of working of institutions, but as well you were referring to that some have taken up AMR as a policy and others not. I understand that maybe outside your analysis, but what factors may have played a role in these countries, why we see differences in outcomes? Why have some countries adapted their institution in different way, despite, let's say, the independent variable being Europe or the prescription being Europe? So what have been factors? I was looking for what explains that some countries have taken up things and others, or that some countries responded to Europeanization influences different.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually how a very close country to Albania has a pharmaceutical field very evolved, while for Albania that's not.
You may finish your answer.
Thank you. I think that these differences are affected from patients' way of answering to a policy, or also what the health policy makers think of what's the best interest at the moment. And for example, in a country, they might think that pharmacovigilance is more needed because they have another field evolved. And in Albania, for example, clinical trials and pharmacovigilance have to be most evolved rather than some other fields that have been evolving for years.
Thank you very much. I hand back to the pro-rector.
Thank you, Dr. Clements, for your opposition. Dear candidate, Mrs. Roshi, the time appointed for the defense of your thesis has passed, and the degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and the way you defended it. And I request that you and your company here on site and online await the results of our deliberations and our return in this room. With that, I suspend this meeting.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side. 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Hit the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. Better future that we go for. And even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you've won the battle once you've grown. South side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile.
I reopen this academic ceremony. Dear candidate, Mr. Roshi, the degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and the way you defended it, and in view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. And Professor Chabanovska is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom, and invite her to now take the floor.
Please all rise. Dear Dajana, do you
use the microphone?
Oh.
No, the other one. Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
Yes. Dear Dajana, do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Dajana Roshi, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certified signed by the rector, the secretary, and other members of the committee, and affixed with the official seal of the university. Thank you. Very welcome. And now it's your treasure.
Yeah, it's my treasure. Yes.
And there is still one thing that we would like to do. So, dear Dr. Roshi, dear Dajana, on behalf of your supervisory team, Professor Helmut Brandt, Professor Gensburazeri, Dr. Salvatore Italia, and myself, I'm privileged and delighted to give this laudatio to acknowledge your scientific achievement, which is a PhD degree from Maastricht University. Achievements are transformational. They strongly mark the process and the attainment which could be only reached through focus, perseverance, and great tenacity, which is how your supervisors describe you worked with them. I use the word transformational, and I will explain what I mean by that and how it manifests itself on different levels of your achievement. Firstly, professional transformation. As a graduate of pharmacy studies, you worked at the National Agency for Medicines and Medical Devices, Pharmacovigilance Department. You took part in drafting ordinance and guidelines that are still part of the pharmaceutical framework. You participated in various pharmacovigilance training at Uppsala Monitoring Center, WHO, and European Commission. Then you work in clinical research, and you started your career in clinical trials. You were a senior clinical research associate, and recently you have been promoted to clinical trial lead. It shows that you operate effectively within and across complex and multifaceted pharmaceutical system. And secondly, this transformation manifests itself in scientific and research transformation. You used the opportunities which were provided by your work to explore and analyze pharmaceutical policies and their adherence to European standards, their impact on accessibility and affordability of medicines in the pharmaceutical market in the Balkan countries. Through your research, you participated in the Europeanization process, observing the pharmaceutical field in your home country, where you observed that only partially the policies are still aligned with the European Union law. And in this way, you prove that you foster innovation by embracing challenges and refreshing perspectives, identifying opportunities for systematic solutions. Now, private transformation. Dajana married in 2020. She married her friend from school times, and they have now a 3-year-old son, Thomas, who is here with us in the audience and fills their life with great happiness.
Yeah.
You show how you embrace your life with love and optimism. And finally, I would like to highlight the personal level and how I experienced working with you. And as I said, I joined the team a bit later. With you, I was with you in the final stages of completing your manuscript and preparing for this big day. I admire the qualities that you show, such as collaborative listening, patience, graceful perseverance, respect, and focus on quality improvement. Thank you, Dajana, and congratulations on this transformational achievement. The congratulations are extended to your dear family, your mother, your father, your husband, your child, and of course, to your supervisory team.
Thank
and
you.
Your sister.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chabanovska, for a very nice laudation. Dear Dr. Roshi, also on behalf of the University of Maastricht, I congratulate you with the degree you have acquired, and I hope you can celebrate this important day, perhaps one of the most important days in your scientific career in any case.
It is.
I also congratulate your supervisors, Professor Chabanovska, Dr. Italia, Professor Burazzeri, and online, Professor Brandt. I also congratulate your parents, of course, family and friends and colleagues, your sister, and I hope you have all a great day and time to celebrate this important day. I would like to thank the members of the opposition for all their preparations, and of course the PEDEL and the technical support team who made this hybrid academic ceremony possible. Having said that, I'm going to close the meeting. I have 2 announcements. We are going to make a picture here with the 3 opponents on the background, perhaps with your parents, if the photographer, with the parents on the foot of the stairs. There's another photo. And then just a second, and then we make a second picture at the foot of the stairs together with your parents.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So having said that, I close this meeting.
Team, of course, next to you. Please enjoy. The microphone. You need a microphone. Please join us. Maybe you can.